recently bought a farm at the end of 2021 and had our first year here in 2022 here on the farm, and really wanted to stick with that personal atmosphere. So every time you come in, you're talking to one of us, and we're going to greet you and say hi. And we want to teach you one thing by coming on here, whether it's specifically about a bee, whether it's about planting a plant. You're going to learn something by proxy by coming here, whether it's just information on our walls. I mean, I've got a little bumblebee poster back there, but there's just little snippets of information everywhere. And we just want to like have it be a fun experience.
Today we are immersing ourselves in the world of pollination. My guest, Brad the Bee Man Kuhn, is dedicated to educating as many people as he can about what each of us can do to restore the failing bee populations, not to mention butterflies, bats, and other pollinators that are also at risk. Now, Brad and his business partner, Thomas, use their flowering plant nursery called Finding Nectar, a great name, as a way to not only provide pesticide-free plants that attract bees and other pollinators, but also as a way to educate every single visitor, whether it's a customer, a classroom, a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout troop, about the vital need to sustain and build all pollinator species with a focus on bees. Now, in this conversation, Brad touches on many subjects, including how pollination works, in case you were absent that day, and what each of us can do to ensure we boost up those bee populations. The answer is surprisingly easy, fun, and enjoyable. And with 80% of our fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds reliant on those little guys, it's very important that we all contribute to keeping bee populations healthy. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Brad Kuhn. Hi, Brad Kuhn. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Deborah?
I'm good. I'm very good. And I'm very thrilled to meet you. I've been hearing about you for a couple of years and about Finding Nectar Nursery, the name of your business. So I'm very excited to just hear everything about it and how you're making the world better.
Yeah, it's fun to know that your daughter introduced you to us years ago now. And we still kind of figure us as such a small business. So to be talking to you wherever you are in the world is just a fun thing.
Fun. Yeah, it is fun. And yeah, she has been, because she's been on the bandwagon for pollinators and she's been raising butterflies, monarchs for a long time. And she has actually been talking about your nursery for a very long time. So I really think sometimes it takes a while with it's not that it's a new concept, but it's become, having pollinators in our yards and keeping bees alive has become so vital. It's always been vital, but we understand how vital it is because we've lost so many species and lost so many bees. And now we're all, we have to all put our best effort out to try to restore it. So, but as we do that, we have to learn as though from scratch. So I appreciate that you came on the show to kind of teach us more about what's happening with bee populations and what each of us can do to build them back up, and not just bees, but other insects and animals as well, right?
Yeah, that's so important to kind of know your own little ecosystem. And kind of know how to find the information about that ecosystem. And that's kind of what we aim to do here at Finding Nectar is, our little motto is that Finding Nectar is just plants for pollinators. But we're really just plants for pollinators in the Denver area in the Front Range right now, because we wanted to start local. We really wanted to get a good grasp on this area before going bigger. We wanted our concept to kind of get a foothold down where when you come here to shop that you're getting the correct plants that pollinators need in our area. And you don't even have to think about it. If you don't really know what you want in your yard, you can come and shop for the colors you want or for a specific area. And like, that like that is actually going to help a pollinator in some way or the other.
I'm excited to learn all these things. So let's back up a little bit and just say that you are the owner of Finding Nectar Nurseries, which is in Arvada, Colorado. And I just want to mention before we go on that even though this podcast or this conversation about these specific pollinators is directed toward the Colorado area, but everybody can learn that they have pollinators in their own. I don't care if we were just talking about Egypt. I don't care if they're in Egypt or they're in Belize, where I am. Like, everyone needs to learn what pollinators work in their own region. So these concepts are transferable anywhere, but the specific plants that maybe we're going to talk about would be more geared toward Colorado, right?
Absolutely. And everything transfers almost worldwide, whether your pollinator is a bee, whether your pollinator is a butterfly, birds, slugs, bats, or whatever it may be in your area. There's a lot more out there than you are just seeing with your own two eyes on a daily basis.
Well, I just wanted to mention too that we do have something in common, even though we haven't met before, other than my daughter being a shopper at your place. My grandfather, according to my grandmother anyway, started the first nursery in Colorado in the 1940s. And it wasn't a flower nursery, but it was it was a tree nursery. So they sold nursery stock all over the whole Denver area, which was obviously quite a bit smaller, less populated anyway at that time. So yeah, it was called Rowan Nurseries. So we're kindred spirits in some way.
That we are.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely right. Okay, well, tell me. I want to start with basically your background and how you even came to think about the idea of starting this business and how you got interested in it. Can you kind of tell your own backstory a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. My backstory is not in plants. It's not in pollinators. I have a background in marketing, and I was working a corporate job. And as I kind of tell people, I successfully got fired at the beginning of COVID. And I was going to go travel the world at that time, and then COVID hit. So I started just kind of, as everybody did, picked up my COVID hobbies. I did all the things of like traveling and camping and all that. And then I kind of circled back around to how much I loved bees. And I've always been an advocate, always been teaching people that like bees are friends. And like when to be out and everybody's always had that experience of like, you have that friend who's like sitting out on a patio on a nice day and there's a bee around and they jump out of their chair and like are running away from this bee. And I like to show people even in those situations that it's like, that bee's fine. That bee's just probably trying to find some water. And maybe giving it like going and picking it up and like setting it over by some water or setting it back on some plants that like that bee's not going to harm you. And I've always been doing that my entire life and always just been a fan of helping out.
Interesting.
I wanted, though, specifically in 2020 to put in a pollinator garden, which is really what kicked this all off. And I couldn't find a lot of good information for what pollinators really need in the Denver area. So I ended up amassing a lot of information from...
Wait, what year? Is this in 2020?
Yeah.
Is this just in 2020? Wow. So this is very recent. That's amazing.
This is very new.
I mean, so that you couldn't even find the information. Well, I know your business is new, but I'm surprised that finding pollinators for this region just 3 years ago was a difficult thing to do. I didn't know that.
Yeah, CSU had a couple good extensions on there, but a lot of them were vague in there of what they actually do. So I went to a bunch of other different resources and kind of pulled them to come up with like what plants I wanted to have in my own personal pollinator garden. Why I did that, I then tried to shop around and ended up having to go to like 7 different nurseries around town and to find the plants. And it was going to cost me about $7,000 to buy about, I don't know, 60, 70 plants at the time. And I thought that was outrageous. So I bought some seeds. And I planted about 150 plants, maybe about 100 of them actually grew. And in that time, I talked to my neighbors about what I was trying to do. And they're like, that's really cool. And like, you're growing them in smaller pots, so they're going to grow faster and they're going to reach maturity at that same amount of time. So they bought those plants off. before I even had a chance to put in that pollinator garden. And
Oh,
that's what inspired the idea.
you're like, darn.
Um, and being
Yeah.
unemployed at the moment, I decided that the best course of action was to plant 10,000 more plants in my basement that was finished at the time and have a bunch of grow lights in there, which, I mean, they grew and we had an
Unbelievable.
first year out of our backyard, but caused some other issues. But that first year really got a lot of traction. We had people coming in our backyard talking to me and my business partner, Thomas, and we really decided to go all in. So we recently bought a farm at the end of 2021 and had our first year here in 2022 here on the farm, and really wanted to stick with that
Oh.
personal atmosphere. So every time you come in, you're talking to one of us and we're going to greet you and say hi. And we want to teach you
Mm.
one thing by coming on here, whether it's specifically about a bee, whether it's about planting a plant. You're going to learn something by proxy by coming here, whether it's just information on our walls. I mean, I've got a little bumblebee poster back there, but there's just little snippets of information
Yeah.
everywhere. And we just want to like have it be a fun experience. So we've got
Well,
everything from plants and animals to compost piles and worms and other fun things, including bees out here that like you can go kind of look around and just kind of have an immersive experience. Because, you know, Denver's a big city now, as you know, Deborah,
this,
and people don't get to have that
yes, I do.
experience. So to be able to see that in, you know, a couple 100 feet and see that biodiversity really helps inspire kids to want to take action. And then that inspires their parents to
Mm-hmm.
look into that more deeply and actually understand why there is a problem. And that's kind of all we're trying to do is just have people understand there's a problem and that like everybody can do something. And planting 3 to 5 plants in your
Yeah.
yard that are for pollinators isn't a big ask. You know, that's all it takes.
No, well, it's not an ask at all because everybody wants flowers. I mean, who doesn't want to have flowers around them? I don't know one person in the world who does not. So I don't think that very many people know that you can plant 3 to 5 different kinds of flowers and actually make an impact on the bee
Yeah,
population and on the pollination of all these
for
things.
sure.
So that's a couple of things you said that are just so well, that's one of them that's so helpful that just to know just a little bit can make a difference. Like you don't
Oh,
have to have a 700 square acre farm in order to have an impact on the bee population.
no, I was
You
talking
can
to a
do it.
lady just
Yeah.
yesterday about removing two big hardy pampas grasses, which is just a big showy grass for your yard that doesn't do as much. And I was like, you know, we
Mm-hmm.
came up with a plan to put, you know, 12 plants in that area where these two big grasses are. And she was super excited
Okay.
because now she understands it's like, oh, wow, by planting these certain plants, we planted like a salvia in the middle, that like she's going to have a lot of bumblebees
Oh.
coming in there. She's going to have other bee
Mm-hmm.
species coming there. Um, and then we planted some milkweed, which milkweed is the only species
Great.
of plant that the monarch can lay its eggs on and eat here. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, she was
Yeah.
really excited about that. So it's like little things like that that like can make a difference.
Yeah, I just think that, and the other thing I just want to say about comment on what you said is that education, the more people know, the more they want to do something, but we're just very poorly, or not at all educated on these types of things. You know, we just plant grass, and nobody even thinks about it, even though everybody's fully aware that biodiversity is taking such a hit everywhere on the planet. You know, I think just this information has not trickled down, and as soon as people know, they're all in. So that's why I'm very excited that you're here to share
Yeah.
your knowledge with us, because it's just so valuable. Well, let's talk about why it is so valuable, right? Because I don't think that's that widely known anymore, even though everybody knows bees are important. Like, can you, it's your favorite subject, so tell us a little bit about bees and why they are so important to
Yeah, and I'll
the
stick a
whole
little bit
food
on this
system, really, to the
podcast.
whole economy, to the world.
Yeah, I mean, bees in
You'll do
general,
what?
I'll stick with bees for the moment, just instead of talking about butterflies and
Okay.
hummingbirds.
Okay.
We could talk about everything here today and spend hours. But so
Okay.
for
We'll
me,
throw a little in. Okay.
yeah, for me, bees are really important here in Colorado. In Colorado, we have over 950 bee species. And Deborah, how many of those do you think are honeybees?
Amazing. Like, I will just make a fool of myself because I have zero idea.
Yeah,
100, I don't know.
five. Basically, five are like honeybee species here in Colorado. And so, how do you help pollinators
How's
then,
that possible?
right? Let that sink in for a second. So,
Well, I guess I
honeybees,
don't know what that means. The honeybee, like, I don't know the significance even of why it's important that there's 5 species of honeybees. Are honeybees completely different than other bees in terms of pollination?
think of I when I describe bees, I like to refer them to dogs because I talk to a lot of kids here and we try and educate
Okay.
them on like how to approach bees and like that. So a lot of my references to bees are kind of in dogs. Is that like bees are like dogs and a honeybee is like a dog because there's different species. You know, we have our honeybee species, we have bumblebee species, we have masonry bees, we have carpenter
Right.
bees, we have sweat bees. Like there's so many different other varieties of
Okay.
bees, and the honeybee species that we have in Colorado are not even threatened. Oh,
Hmm.
yeah. Uh, so what do we do? So I point out about
Well,
basically
I
we
guess
could
what does that mean though? What does that mean for pollination? Like, why are the honeybees specifically important or not important to pollination?
no, they're all important, but honeybees are a massive amount of bees in a specific area that go to a certain amount of plants and then back and forth. Where a
Oh,
masonry bee and carpenter bees basically just
okay.
kind of roam around and they'll pollinate about 100 times more plants in one day than a honeybee in there.
Oh,
But those other
oh,
bees
okay.
are
Did not know
more
that.
threatened and more endangered than the typical honeybee in there is what I'm more trying to say. And
Hmm.
those are the
Okay.
species that we
I
should be
see.
actually looking at to try and take care of.
Okay. Okay. Well, that helps. That helps just to know that much.
Yeah. I could talk for hours, so I might
So,
just
so
well,
what are well, that's okay because I think it's really important information. Can you talk a little bit about what they do though, as far as pollination? Like, I mean, I guess most people know that like a bee flies from one flower to the next, and inadvertently, because of I guess the shape of their body, they just pick up pollen, right, and take it to the next flower, and then deposit it there. That's basically how it works, right?
yeah. That is, you know, it takes it from the male plants, the
Sort of.
pollen from the male plants, and then it drops it down into the female plant in there inadvertently in there. Other bees use the pollen. I
Hmm.
just kind of did a little segment on teaching people about what bee we call it bee bread in the industry is, and they also use the pollen for their larvae in there too. And that's another way that they pollinate
Okay.
is they purposely pick up pollen and bring it back to their hives because a lot of the eggs that bees lay need that pollen mixed with the other nectar and other enzymes for that larva to be able to hatch in there too. So
Okay.
inadvertently and on purpose, they pick up and carry pollen on their legs, on their body, and as they're jumping around from different plants, that's how those other plants and those how those flowers really get into that full bloom.
So, why? Let's talk a little bit then about why the bee population is in such decline. I know that a lot of it has to do with pesticides. Is that all of it?
Pesticides, expanding of yards here in Colorado. You know, if we want to talk about like monarchs a little bit too, I was
Sure.
doing a little study that like every new I'm in a little sub development just for a little explanation. And every new house that they put in
Mm-hmm.
removes 24 milkweed plants. And if we think about that, the monarch is
Mm.
threatened, every one of those plants could house, you know, 5 to 10 caterpillars that could eventually become a monarch. And when we're putting in 2,500 new houses in each subdevelopment out here, you can kind of extrapolate that times 25. That's enough habitat just for the monarch butterfly that's threatened. Now, if we want to talk about leafcutter bees and
So,
native,
I mean,
it's the same concept.
well, this must be, is this the reason, or is it one of the main reasons why we're losing bees worldwide? Just development, pure and simple replacement of their habitat?
Yeah, established habitats, replacement of that. The use of systemic pesticides is another big one. Here, that's one of the things we try and avoid in ours, is to use any systemics at all or any pesticides at all. We try to use beneficial insects to just kind of boost up our ecosystem rather than to take away from our ecosystem. And we think about that. We think about like building up the bacterias in our soils. So like here we use a living soil versus like one that's been heat treated to like, again, add different elements to our ecosystem rather than take away. So going back to our original ask is like, if you can plant 3 plants in your yard that are well thought out for pollinators, you are making a difference. You may not see it directly. You may not see those bees coming there in the morning or coming there during the day, but you are getting and helping local pollinator species by doing that.
So, and that's let's just say 3 species you're adding. Is that just per season? Because I know one of the things you do is encourage people to plant pollinators in every single season. I don't know about the winter, but at least in the fall and the spring. So would that be like planting, like, would you recommend at least 3 pollinator species per season?
Yeah, and when you say pollinators, I think you're meaning plants in there, but we recommend 3 flowering bloom
I call
seasons.
them, yeah.
Oh no, it's all good. I just wanted to make sure we're clear on that, because it is an important thing that we talk about here, is that providing habitat, providing a food and a nectar source for a creature that may only fly 3 miles from its nest in a diameter its entire life, to be able to go find a food source after it's depleted is very challenging for that creature. And when it's fighting with other sources around there, creating somewhere that it can come in spring, summer, and fall, so that it doesn't have to expend more energy to find it, is actually helping them a lot save their resources to either grow their colony, keep themselves fed for winter, and a lot of other things that like we could talk for hours on, to be honest. So I'm trying to keep it pretty simple here. But like that's why we say 3 plants is important, to talk about the seasonality of it.
So were you saying though 3 plants per season, or are you just saying like even one plant per season, like one for the spring, one for the fall, and one? Oh, really?
That's all we're asking.
That makes a difference. That's amazing. Okay. So what if you're like me and don't have a yard or don't have room for a yard? Does it work the same if you have them in planters?
Yeah, why not? I mean, we have planters all over our yard here just to show people that like bees are all over them. As long as it's got a bloom, and as long as you're creating that habitat, the bee doesn't care if it's in the ground or if it's in a pot.
Well, aren't also things like, let's talk about lawns a little bit too, because with No Mow May just coming to an end, I guess this is the last day of May. So we had, it's sort of a new movement. I don't know if everyone's heard of it, but to not mow, the ask is to not mow your lawn for the month of May, so that things like dandelions and other like natural flowers can pollinate longer. And just by extending the season another month, it seems to make a pretty significant difference. I mean, maybe the jury's out a little bit, but there seems to be a lot of success, especially even for a farmer. I read one farmer who didn't mow his, like, I think he had a 25-acre farm, and didn't mow it until mid-July. And he's done it for 2 years, and said the amount of birds and bees that has brought back is phenomenal. So is that something that you're hearing more from people that are coming into your shop, or you're hearing more
Yeah.
about in general is no mow May?
Yeah. I have mixed feelings sometimes about No Mo May, but that's not to say it's not a great thing. But No Mo May really does jumpstart the season for pollinators and for animals in general. If you're going out,
Mm,
at least here in the Colorado area, it's pretty barren until you get to the end of May. So to be able to get dandelions, a great source of
yeah.
nectar for bees, to be able to get even like their seeds, like that's a great food source for birds. We have other weeds around here too.
Oh.
It's called fillery around here that like blooms in May. Like that really jumpstarts
Hmm.
the season for pollinators to have a good year. They're hibernating for
Huh.
the winter. They're coming out, they're hungry, they need to rebuild their nest. It got maybe destroyed a little bit, they need to fix it up. That helps.
Mm-hmm.
And that really helps boost it out because, you think about the majority of people's gardens blooming, it's really about now that it's starting
Mm-hmm.
to really come to life, especially in the Midwest or in the Mountain
Right.
West regions. And that jumpstart
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
so beneficial in so many different ways, that
Well,
we can't even talk about in days.
well, then what is your hesitation? You said you have mixed emotions. What's the downside to no mow May? It's hard to
I
say,
want,
first of all,
I
no
want,
mow May.
I want no
Besides that.
mo, I want no mo May to be no weed May. Like I don't want you to spray your weed begons. I don't want you to like go out there and pull all your what you think calling weeds. Um, that's the one thing
Yeah.
that I saw across Denver happen is that people are like, well, I still don't want dandelions in my yard, but that's kind of the point. So I'd see a lot of people out
Oh,
there spraying, and they
that
missed
is
half
the
the
point.
point. They missed half the point of No Mo May being that we need to actually have those dandelions kind of come up. We need to have those other nectar sources coming up or seed sources coming up to actually give everybody a jump start to have a great spring right around you.
Well, this seems again to be, well, a couple things maybe. Education, that people just need to understand what the point is, I guess. It's new, so maybe people aren't getting the point fully. So that's one thing. We need education. But then there's this whole, what will the neighbors think kind of thing. Because I know, just we were talking about my daughter earlier, they like to never mow their lawn. They really like to let it go crazy, but at least through May, but often much longer. And it's, even if, first of all, somebody would call the city and say, these people aren't mowing their lawn, or things like that happen. So just to get it out there in the atmosphere, people understand that there's a point to not mowing your lawn, and that there should be no socially negative aspect of it, I guess, would be important. So education and social acceptance of the idea. And I also kind of wonder if at some point this doesn't need to go into a legislative type of thing, although I know people hate more laws. But when we're talking about the potential collapse of a food system, maybe it's worth having some long lawns, or no lawns, mandated in some way. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
that's a big change. We're starting quite a bit smaller than that, and we probably talk to
Yeah.
2 to 3 HOAs a week just about what's on their plant lists, how often they should be mowing,
Hmm.
uh, why they're
Mm-hmm.
only allowing shrubs versus flowering plants and things like that. So education is so
Oh,
important. I I don't know how you do that at the legislative
yeah.
branch. That's kind of a bit over my head and a bit outside of the scope because we're trying to stick with the
Sure.
maintaining doable. And everybody can do no mow May.
Mm-hmm.
I've realized that everybody
Mm-hmm.
should do no weeding way
Mm-hmm.
May too, and just make sure that they understand that aspect of it. It would be amazing if legislation
Mm-hmm.
changed it to say, here are the reasons why. that we do this, and it's not illegal to have
Mm-hmm.
certain native plants in your yard all year long. And it's always surprising to me when people are coming to me and asking, saying, "Hey, my neighbors filed a police report," or I can't remember the term for it, where it's like the police have gotten involved, that like they
Yeah.
need to weed their garden bed that is just full of native plants,
Yeah.
because it doesn't fit the
Yeah.
beauty of
Yeah.
what they see as their neighbor. They're now
Right.
getting asked to stop. And that's the part that
Right.
I want to change, is that everybody
Yeah.
needs to know that your beauty is
Yeah.
not everybody else's beauty.
Yeah. Well, and that the health of the environment is the most beautiful of all, right? And I think we're just
Right.
we're facing that on so many levels around the planet right now, that we just need such massive education about so many things. So sometimes it's hard to kind of pick your, I don't want to say pick your poison,
Pick your
pick your
battles.
cause, or pick your area that you want to focus on, pick your battles. Yeah, that's probably a good way. I hate to use the fighting term. I was trying to think of something a little bit more positive, but we just have to uh somehow, I think, starting with kids, like you said, you bring kids out to the farm and you educate them. That is the number one. I mean, that's the future, right? And if the earlier that they understand and can embrace it and become part of the solution, that's where we are. That's where we are probably going to see the change that we need to see. But it's a slow process for everybody, and you're so much at the beginning of it, which is kind of interesting to me. I did not realize it's been a relatively new development. Like, just even your store is a relatively new in development. So kind of interesting. Kind of looking at a paradigm shift, though, that right, because we're trying to go take society from one way of thinking about the world to a whole other way of looking at the world. That's never easy.
No. And just, it's the education. Like you said, all I'm doing is just educating at this point. The selling comes secondary to me, and it's not really my main focus. I mean,
Mm,
when we first, Thomas and I first started talking about this, we talked about a nonprofit and how do
mm-hmm.
we do that? And neither of us had a good grasp of like, how can we get in front of enough people as a nonprofit to actually resonate?
Yeah.
But we did know that like people like
Mm-hmm.
beauty and people love flowers. And if we can get that in their
Yeah.
hands and in their yard to hold on to, that we can then
Mm-hmm.
unknowingly or knowingly start changing things in this area, and hopefully soon in a much larger scale.
Which is, I want to ask you about that comment in just a minute, but I just wanted to say, using the power of the marketplace, of capitalism, it really, the lever of that is actually much more, can be much more impactful than trying to do it as a nonprofit. I've worked in my share of nonprofits and run a couple, and I honestly have come to the conclusion, and if you look at a podcast that we did from a couple of weeks ago called "The Impact Entrepreneur," we had a guest on that was also arguing for the benefits of using capitalism to make the world better. It's a faster, and there's a market for it. You have to create a market, and I think I think you took the wiser path, because it's also sustainable. It's hard to sustain a nonprofit, but you can sustain your message through sales. So I think you totally made the right choice with going with a regular business.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's always good. It's always
You're welcome.
reassuring to hear.
Well, I mean, the proof is going to be in the pudding, right? You have to be able to stay in business. And so far, it seems like you're doing really well. You've already grown quite a bit, haven't you?
Yeah, we definitely have grown quite a bit, from an eighth of an acre in a backyard and basement to 5 acres. And that's 5 acres in one greenhouse, and until we
Oh,
get like
really?
six
That's
greenhouses.
fantastic.
Yeah. So, the plan is to put 6 greenhouses here and
Whew.
then
And,
go from there.
well, I saw on your Facebook page that you had a situation with winds that came along, 60-mile-an-hour winds that blew your greenhouse. I don't know if that was your first greenhouse away. So, and that happened here right down the street from where I'm living right now, is that they had a big, beautiful greenhouse with all these native plants in it. Same thing, hurricane winds came through. So what do you do how do you now rebuild so that doesn't happen, or can you?
We definitely have built stronger, and like we have a lot more bracing in our greenhouse to have that prevented. That actually happened before we were completely finished building our greenhouse, to be honest. And
oh, really? Oh, well, that's probably good. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, I guess good and bad in the same way. But to prevent that from happening, nature's nature. We are at nature's mercy, and we know that. And being in the business that we're in, it's something we can plan for. I don't think it's something we can ever prevent. I mean, here in Colorado, we have wildfires. Yeah. Everybody talks about that. Everybody here sees smoke from Canada that's been coming in all year from their wildfire up there. Other parts of the world have hurricanes. Other parts have earthquakes. You can't prevent against those, but you can prepare. And if you're prepared and like you have the mentality that like that Mother Earth is going to win, what do you do to prevent that? You plan. And that's all we're going to do, is that like we're just going to plan that like something may happen and we're going to be ready for it. And last year when our greenhouse collapsed, we moved everything onto trailers, and we sold off trailers for 3.5 months until we fixed our greenhouse up. And that's fine. I mean, we're not a Home Depot. We're not a big store, and we never will be. I don't think that effectively we can reach people by being that. I want to say hi to 90% of all of our customers that come in. I want to answer any questions they have. And if they want to spend an hour here chit-chatting, so be it. If they don't want to buy anything, great. But maybe they can learn something that they can take away from here. So if we have a building or not, cool. We can plan for rebuilding it, and always will. But what's the point of worrying about something that like inevitably will happen if you don't take care of your stuff?
Okay. Well, so that kind of begs the question. You said you want to be there. You don't want to be a big Home Depot type situation, but you want to talk to all your customers, or as many as you can. What are your plans that you alluded to earlier about for the future and for different areas? Are you trying to replicate this in the future possibly, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I would love to replicate this. I would love to figure that piece out. It's always been something Thomas and I have talked about, like moving even to like Western Colorado to start, and both of us like investing our time in figuring out the pollinators over there, or Wyoming, and like literally just looking at this slowly and trying to bring people onto our team who are advocates for those areas and really can help us put in that legwork. Because when you come into our shop, we want to keep that model, that like you're getting the correct plants for that area, and not have us be shipping these plants all around the world. It's a pipe dream, I kind of think, in some way.
It's not the answer.
But I don't have the answer for it right now, but it's a dream.
Yeah. Well, I think this dream of educating people is really, I mean, you're doing that already. You've already realized that dream. So it's just a matter of, are you going to expand the dream, and at what level and at what speed? But you're doing it, you're in one of those rare businesses, I think, where it's a success, like from the day you opened, regardless of the financial success, because you've already, the day one person came in and learned something, you had a successful business. Not many businesses can say that.
Yeah, Thomas and I aren't in this to be millionaires. So, at the end of the day, if we can help a handful of people.
If it happens, though, it happens, darn it.
Yeah, we'll probably just reinvest it and put it back into doing something bigger and better that helps us reach our goals of like our own way of changing the world. Not to kind of use your slogan there, but it's like, if we could.
Hey, please use it. I mean, that's the thing is that you take one person changing the world in their own way that matters to them. You've loved bees your whole life. Like I have to say, I have not felt that way my whole life. The women in my family kind of belong to that class where the bee came and everybody just like ran like it was Godzilla in their midst. And I think I love that you're changing that mindset because it takes if you've had that fear of bees, for example, like it's hard to get over, honestly. Like, it's just so ingrained in you from such an early age. But rather to look at them and just say, oh my God, there's another friend, there's another friend.
Yeah.
That's just teaching that mindset, that little shift can make all the difference in the world. Like, oh, there's my food and my flowers and everything comes from that little insect and his
Right.
friends. So it's
Yeah.
good. It's a great thing that you're educating. You know, one thing that also, well, I know there's other things people can do besides plant these specific plants, and I guess herbs as well, right? Because they're not all flowers. They're also herbs that you can plant, right? That are
Correct.
also that help pollinate.
There's trees too, and
Like
there's
like what?
water sources, and
Right.
there's there's so many different angles that you can come and help pollinators. We just really come down to that we want to have at this moment flowering plants because we grow everything from seed.
I
But I
see.
mean, bees need
Mhm.
water. Bees can't fly to drink water. So like
Right.
bird baths, other areas where it's like they just have a little bit of slope to stand on, that they can drink water from is another way to help out local pollinator
Yeah.
species. Like if you're in a very arid area, having a water source out
Yeah.
for them to come to is huge. There's
I think that's a thing that is not well known also because like if you're gonna put it's a really hot day and like it's 95 degrees or something, bees are probably dying of thirst and nobody would think of that, right? So if you put a little tiny bowl of water out on your windowsill, just that helps, right? With something for you said for the
Sure.
slope, like put some marbles in it or something so that they can stand on it.
Yeah, we
Is
have these
that
little.
that
I
makes a
know you
big
can't
difference,
see
right?
it. I know you can't see us at the moment, Deborah, but I'm kind of showing the screen. We have these like little bee cups
For
that are
Jim.
like
Yeah.
they're like little for little fairy garden type things. But as
Oh,
you're watering, they fill up with a little bit of water,
oh,
and we'll see 4 or 5 bees on them after we get done watering, just coming to grab themselves a little drink. And this holds maybe a half an ounce of water in them, and it really isn't that big, but it does enough, and it it
yeah.
it, it helps. And
They don't drink much.
yeah,
Yeah. You said they can't fly to get water. Why is that? Did I understand that correctly?
they just land to drink. I mean, it'd be like you trying to drink water while laying on your back. It's very challenging to do. Just anatomy wise, it just is a
Oh,
lot
you
easier.
mean they can't fly and drink? I see. Yeah.
Correct.
So they can fly to a new source to get water, but while they're drinking, they have to just stand. Is
Correct.
that what you mean? Or they
Yep.
just have to stay still? Okay. Okay. Well, that helps. So if people want to attract more bees, help the population, they can plant 2, 3, or 4, or 5, 6 species in their yard, or there's no limit, but at least in their yard 3 times a year, like so, different species for each season. Um, and they can put water out. Is there anything else? I think you mentioned that you don't use pesticides, which I know is a huge thing. Is it? Do you encourage people to use like natural sources of like natural predators,
Yeah.
other insects,
Beneficials,
to keep the
ladybugs.
we
Yeah, lacewing. I mean, ladybugs is like the
ladybug?
most well-known one that we kind of talk about for the aphids. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
inviting them in, having marigolds around your vegetable gardens is another way of doing that. A lot of people, when they garden for vegetables, talk about companion planting, but we don't talk about it as much when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to our actual gardens. And that's something you can do to, like, depending on what you're planting, what problems you're having, look at what you have around there in terms of predator insects that could come take care of that problem naturally for you. And it's not going to be your instant quick fix, but it will over time
Mm-hmm.
balance that out. So maybe you need to use some kind of knockdown in the moment, and please try and use them really early in the morning or late at night so that you have the least amount of pollinators out there if you do have to use those.
But I mean, can't people have, you do it at the farm? You don't, do you use pesticides at the farm, or is it like a pesticide free zone?
We do not use any pesticides on our outdoor plants. So we have an outdoor sales area. We do use it sometimes in our greenhouse, but we do not use any systemics. And a systemic is a type of pesticide that grows up through the actual stalk itself or the leaf.
Mm-hmm.
And when that pest eats
Right.
that type of plant, it kills it. We use all what's called knockdowns. So it is instant. And like if it touches that insect, it'll kill it then. But then that pesticide's inoculated at that point and not no longer effective almost minutes after that. So
Oh, interesting. I hadn't heard that term before. So, do you think it's possible to have a flower garden, just say a straight flower garden, without using any kind of thing, or is it just too difficult to do? Do you think
we
without
do it.
using any kind of a knockdown or anything? Is that unrealistic?
No,
Yeah.
not at all. I mean,
Well,
you
you do it
have
outside. You said sometime. Yeah. Oh,
no, we don't do it outside at all. We don't use any pesticides
yeah.
at our nursery when it's outdoors. We have a lot of beneficials
Okay.
that we're trying to plant around. We are trying our best
Mm,
to be pesticide free outside. The state of Colorado may come in and tell us differently. And we have a pesticide plan if we do
wow.
have an infestation. But currently, we are a pesticide free sales area, is the best way I know how to say it. We do use
So,
pesticides in the
what does
greenhouse.
that mean? Yeah, not systemics. So what does that mean that the state of Colorado could come around? Do they is that something that happens that they come and say there's something spreading and you have to use a pesticide?
Yeah, they come and do different
Is that a
states have
thing?
different regulations, and they'll come and do sporadic checks
Hmm.
for nurseries in general. It's not nobody's going to have this like in their own backyard and things like that, but they come and check to make sure that like
Right.
we don't have
Yeah.
infestations. We're not shipping bugs to different parts of the state that like could cause issues everywhere else. So we're just trying to make sure we follow all those practices,
Oh, I
make
see.
sure
Yeah.
we're being safe for the
Yeah.
rest of the state of Colorado too.
Yeah. So I have two thoughts. I'm wondering, have you ever thought about giving classes to like letting like a school come through, or even doing an online um, I don't know, lesson maybe for classrooms. I interviewed somebody recently who has they work with animal testing. They're trying to work, prevent animal testing and cruelty. And one of the things they do is they have an online. Of course, they have a big organization, but I thought this was such a good way for them to get the message out. They offer a course to um, any classroom that wants to sign up, like a virtual course, and then just give them some lessons about animal cruelty and how to care for
Yeah,
animals. And then they also have an app which teaches people, and I think that could also be an interesting tool to use. It's just an app that tells people like what to plant, and I don't know, just
that's
just thinking
cool.
of ways to spread the message for pollination. Yeah. Yeah,
I
maybe we'll have to talk about that later.
I don't know how to do the app. That is a definite new idea for me. That is something
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to chew on for a little bit to figure that one out, how we
Yeah.
would even accomplish that. But we do have
Hmm.
classes. We have schools come
Yeah.
out or groups come out per request as of right now. We've been
Oh,
very
you
inundated.
do?
Yeah, we've been very inundated with
Oh,
garden clubs, with schools, with Girl Scout troops, Boy Scout
that's
troops,
so interesting.
summer camps, things like that. That we've
Wow.
never even had to advertise for
Oh.
them,
Yeah.
because we just haven't been able to keep up, to be honest. And it's a really
Well,
cool
yeah,
thing.
you're a small organization.
Yeah, and there's only three of us right now here that run this, so
Mm-hmm.
it's just not been
Yeah.
something we've promoted. It's not been something we've really like put out there yet.
Hmm.
It's coming, and it will be something that like will be a big part
Yeah.
of our business. But we've been doing a lot of classes and that
That's
for kids for free.
huh.
They come out here and just kind of like learn about the cycle of life. Then we've done like beekeeping classes. We call it our bee petting tour for like
Whoa, really?
kids, where we like break apart a hive a little bit, and then we go out and like I'll show them. I'll like go out and like
Really?
on my hand, and I'll have it like crawl across my hand, and then like show them that I can pet it, and then like the kids that like are into it can come and try with my help, and they're touching a bee. And normally that gets their parents coming back in the weekend being like, did you let my kid actually pet a bee? And I'm like, yeah, like there's nothing wrong with that.
Well,
these
whatever it
these are
takes.
these are like dogs. They're gonna let you know when they're not happy. And where we taught
Huh.
them how to see that. So
Boy, I think you're really speaking to this thirst that's out there. Like the fact that all these places, you're a 3-person organization, and you've been open a couple of years, 3 years, I guess now, right? And you have got groups coming to you saying we want to learn. Like that just kind of is an indicator, I think, of the interest. People want to know, but they just don't have the knowledge. So I just think you've really landed on something monumental. Not only is it physically, doing something, but you're also this education piece. I think it just, I think your timing was quite right on there. So if you had, for listeners, people who are listening to the podcast or watching the podcast, if they want to just get more involved, I guess they can just come out to your shop. But I don't know. Are there any other resources that you know of that where people can learn about what to plant and how to plant and these predators? I
um,
mean, you're self-taught. It seems like, but you learned it somewhere.
ask your local garden center. Go to your local garden center and
Hmm.
ask them. They know
What
90%
should I?
of what it is. Your big box stores don't, but they might not have all the
Right.
answers, but they are going to know. And ask
Hmm.
them the questions. Spend an hour, like, get on their nerves. Tell them until you get a go away from them. Keep asking them questions until you're satisfied. Um, find your local groups. Find your local
Hmm.
etymologists. Like here we have the butterfly pavilion and the botanic gardens, and resources like that are so
Yeah.
useful. Ask your neighbor. I mean,
Hmm.
I am always surprised when I talk to my dad, who's a vet, how much he knows about plants. And it blows my mind that my dad, who I thought only cared about pigs growing up, he knows about the crown of a plant. He knows about like all the different parts of like the flower.
Wow.
And you would be surprised. Talk to your neighbors, talk to other people that go up to somebody that has a nice lawn, or has a nice, sorry, not a nice lawn, like a nice garden out front, and be like, how did you do this? Where'd you start?
Right.
Be friendly.
Yeah.
And that's all I did is I
Really,
just started.
really a great idea. I read, I didn't see the whole thing, but I just saw a note or a headline or something that the Surgeon General said that loneliness is one of the, like, it's becoming one of a huge health concern, one of the top health concerns in the nation, loneliness. And a lot of that is because people won't go next door and ask their neighbor, what are you planning? I mean, this is a way to build community. If you can just start, because everyone wants to share. As soon as you walk up to them and say, what are you doing? Most people will be eager to talk to you. And it's just like you're doing a few things at one time, right? And um, just think that's really good advice to talk to your neighbor, talk to everybody, just talk to people.
Yeah, people want to talk. Take your head out of the phone and just ask them how their day
Yeah.
is and what they have going on. They'll help you out.
Get your head out of the phone is a really good idea. Get your head out of the phone and into the garden. So, if I come out there when I get back in Colorado, I saw on one of your Facebook pages that I don't have it in front of me, but you had some kind of like a pollinator garden, like a pre-made one that like you could, I don't know if it was a seed kit or a flower kit or something that you could just like, I just want to get something and take it to my deck and plant it, like without having to learn a whole lot of things. Is that something that you offer? Like I can just say, give me a set of pollinators and I'll go plant them.
We have that in the spring. That is not something we offer year round, but we do offer basically like a picked for you type of garden. We help everybody that comes, Deborah, that like if you're like, hey, this is the space I need to fill.
Okay.
These are the colors I like. We're gonna make sure you get. We guarantee that like even if you have the blackest of thumbs, that's gonna kill all your plants. You're gonna come back. We're gonna replace that plant for you. We just want you to have fun doing it. And like if it's a pain to pick out the plants, we'll do it for you. We'll happily figure out in the layout for you when you come in. Just come in with pictures, come in with kind of like general dimensions. We all know how to do it. We all can like kind of the way that it typically works with me. When you come in, I'll be like, hey, why don't you look around first, find one plant that you particularly must have in your yard. And then I'll start building around that. And they'll be like, okay, what about the like fragrant?
Oh, really?
And it's like, we'll go to like one that maybe smells like anise. And like that one's good for like keeping the hummingbirds in. And then it's like, maybe we'll look at like, I like sphinx moths, which are like it's like a cross between a moth and like a hummingbird. And so it's like, I like bringing those around. So I tend to put those in people's little areas in there. And they're a fun little pollinator. And you know, we'll 100% do that. If you want to be in Florida and need some help, you email us, we'll figure it out for you. We'll try and help you out wherever you are. We'll see if we have a resource there. If we're not it, and we'll point you in the right direction. Just ask. You know, we just want you to have a good time.
Well, this has been really so educational for me, and I hope for people listening. I know that I'm very excited to get back and come out and visit you. I haven't been there yet. I love that you said if you're in Florida, call. We'll see if somebody in Florida calls you and see if we can get people around the world to know more about you. But definitely people in Colorado. And I just thank you so much for spending this time, and thank you for what you're doing. Because I mean, you are making a significant difference just through the podcast, if nothing else. I mean, just letting people know what the issue is and how to fix it and how to have fun doing it and how to bring beauty to your yard and herbs to your yard. I mean, just like there's no downside here, right? So I'm really excited to support you and come see you when we get there, and just wish you the best and wish you the best success.
Thank you. It was really fun to be on your podcast here, Deborah, and I look forward to meeting you in person when you come on out.
All right, Brad, take care, and we'll stay in touch, okay?